All of the legendaries are out currently, which means we could do a tier list for the legendaries in this set. We'll start off with our boy Prince Renathal. Prince Renathal is a pretty great card. Okay, it's a pretty great card. It is meta warping. It's arguably the most defining free legendary that they've ever given us in Hearthstone. Turned out the ability to make your deck 40 and your health start at 40 is pretty great, and it probably will see play for the entire time it is in the standard format. I think it's very easy. I'm just gonna put it at S. Murloc Homes. I personally don't think that Murloc's Homes is very good. Problem with Murloc Homes is that you have to get all 3 clues correct to get anything. If you get one wrong, you don't get any cards and you're playing a 3-mana 3/4 into your deck. Most of the time, you probably don't want to use this card whatsoever. And I don't think it's going to see play in standard. It probably will never see play in wild. It's just very, very slow. I think it's pretty safe to say that unfortunately for Murloc Homes, he's a little bit of a D tier. D, because you can still play in a Highland and Veteran player. I don't think it's going to be good enough. Decimator Ulgra for a 6-mana 3/7 to basically potentially do absolutely nothing. It's a bad stat line. If your opponent has like a big minion on board, this potentially does absolutely nothing for 6 mana. Now it does have charge in a sense because you can hit your opponent's face. This card is completely based on how good the damage warrior deck is going to be. But I think most of the time this card is not going to be good enough to actually be like winning you the game. But there are going to be moments I think that this card might actually win, but I don't think it's going to be super good. It does have potential. I don't think it's unplayable. I think it's going to be more like C. With that weapon, there must be a package. If there's a package, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be good. I'm going to go with C. I don't think it's going to be that good. I personally believe that the package is generally not great. Out of all the legendaries I've seen, this one is definitely one of the ones I think is going to be meta warping. This card looks really good. There's a lot of very powerful effects with Evolved Shaman right now. And this is a must kill card. If you don't kill this card, you're probably losing the game. It generates value too fast. It generates tempo too fast. And it curves so nicely into that location. It's like insane. So I think it's very hard to argue that this card is not at least an A tier. Now chat, the question is, do we think it's an S tier? I don't know if it's on the level of Prince Renathal. I'm gonna go with A. I don't think it's gonna be meta warping. I just think it's gonna be very good. Kel'Thuzad the Inevitable. Kel'Thuzad's whole game plan basically revolves around the fact that you can play volatile skeletons. Are volatile skeletons gonna be good? Well, let's go take a peek, shall we? So this card's good. Like a 4 mana to summon 2/2 volatile skeletons and get volatile skeletons and get 4 armor is pretty decent. I think actually the location's pretty great for this, if I'm being honest. I think this card is kind of weak, but it really depends on the meta. But I do think that this card is very strong. If you freeze a minion and summon a 2/2 volatile skeleton, that's not horrible, right? And it fits right into your game plan. And because they print Solid Alibi, I think that's fine. I don't know if this is better than Mordresh, if I'm being honest. I think most of the time I'd rather play Mordresh, but there is the potential for this card to be very good. And I think I'm gonna put it in B. Like it's definitely better than Ulgra in my opinion. So B seems fine. I think there's enough tools for it to make it work. It at least gives you a game plan like unlike Ulgra. Yeah. Stort the Stored. 3 mana 3/3 death rattle. Give the next Silverhand recruit you summon +3/+3 in this death rattle. This card is very powerful if you are able to draw it in the early game. The problem with that is if you don't draw it in the early game, I think it's arguably the worst card in the game. It's bad. If this card was an epic, then I would think it would be one of the best cards in the set. But because it's a legendary and you don't have a guaranteed way to actually draw him, it makes the card worse than it actually is. The bigger problem with this card is that you would almost rather play Cariel 1000% of the time, and Cariel's hero power replaces your Silverhand recruit one. So this card's probably not going to see a ton of play. And you guys can disagree with me all you want, but I think it's here. I don't think it's unplayable. 10 minutes hand-to-hand lifesteal battlecry, deal 5 damage amongst enemies. Endlessly infuse. Each time a minion dies, you get 1 more infuse. It deals 1 more damage. I think this card's really bad. Arguably only playable in Druid. The issue with this effect is that it has to be in your hand. You never want to keep a 10 mana 10/10 in your hand. There's not a single deck in the game that wants to keep this in your hand. It is so hard to make this card work. Now, the only reason I think Druid can do this is because Celestial Alignment works and they have Scales of Onyxia. Scales of Onyxia for 7 mana, and unfortunately for a lot of us, we're not only Druid players. Is it C or is it D? I'm pretty sure it's D. I'd arguably put it higher than Ulgra, but it's probably around here. We're gonna Kel that's Denathrius for 0 mana though. Yeah, but that doesn't make Denathrius a good card. We're only doing that because of Kel'Thuzad. Rush, after this attacks, equip it, and then once you attack, it becomes a weapon, and then once you attack with the weapon, it becomes a minion, and then once you attack with it as a minion, it goes back to your weapon. The problem with this card though is how often is that gonna happen? Because that's like the best case scenario for this card. Now you can buff it. I think this might be the hardest card to evaluate because we've never had effect like this. I would argue that it's probably better than Sire Denathrius, right? It's probably here or here, but I don't know where else I would put it. I don't think it's better than Vosh, so it has to be like here. It's arguably better than Sire Denathrius, so maybe it's here, but I think it's here.
Thank you to Firestone for sponsoring this video. If you want to level up your Hearthstone game, make sure you're using Firestone. Firestone helps you keep track of your deck, what's in it, what you've played, and what's in your hand. Firestone also keeps track of what your opponent has played, what potential secrets they could have, and so much more information that will help you win more. Firestone also keeps track of every single game you played, and you can also watch each individual replay to see what exactly went wrong and how you won or lost the game. Firestone also keeps track of your entire collection to let you know how much of each set you've actually completed. It also lets you know how many packs you opened over the years in case you were curious how many classic packs you've actually ended up opening. There is a bunch of achievements that you can go for in Firestone to show off to all your friends. Firestone is the perfect companion to have while playing Hearthstone, so make sure you download it with the link in the description.
6 mana 6/6 Battlecry resurrect 4 friendly imps. Infuse 5, give your imps +2/+2. This card on its own is enough for this card to see play. You don't need to run any other imps in the deck. This card on its own is enough for Rafam to see play. So if this card is playable, Rafam's playable. And I'm pretty sure this card will be playable. Is it a better win condition than Kalthazad? I believe so. I don't know if it's A, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a B. All right, Huntsman Altimore. Summon a 5/4, summon a Gargan Companion, and then you infuse 4, you summon another one, and then you infuse 8, you add another one. Hectus, basically it's the animal companions. This card suffers from the same issue as Sire Denathrius, which is this needs to be your hand for it to be good. I would not play a card that is a 7 mana 5/4, summon an animal companion. If you can infuse 4 and summon 2 animal companions, then we get a little bit Bacante. I just don't think that this effect is going to be worth running majority of the time. It feels like a very niche legendary to actually see play. This card is like bottom C. Might be better than Olgra. Actually, arguably, it's probably better than Store, in my opinion. The main thing about Call of the Wild and why it's a good card is that it doesn't have to sit in your hand for it to be good. If you top deck this card, it is great. If you top deck the Legendary, it's absolutely garbage. There are going to be niche cases where obviously playing that card for 7 mana and summoning all your animal companions is great, but Call of the Wild is a better card. Pelagos, 3 mana 1/6 for Priest. After you cast a spell on a friendly minion, set its attack and health to the higher of the two. This card looks spicy, man. It's a good card for Priest. Priest will probably use this effect in some decks for sure. This is one of those cards like Vosh that if you kind of leave on the board, it gets a little bit spooky. It gets really spooky actually, right? I mean, if there's a deck that makes this card work, it's probably pretty great. And we've seen another card in the set that works really nicely with it. So this is a card that is arguably a must kill card. Is it an 8/8 with 1 wig? Give a minion +1/+2. If you hold a Naga while holding this, add a serpent wig to your hand. Okay, so it's an 8/8 for 4 mana. That's pretty good. I mean, if that's the case, then it's a must kill card, and it reminds me a ton of Vosh. I don't know if it's S tier, but it's definitely A tier then. Like, that's kind of insane. So High Priest saw play because you made really big minions, and your opponent couldn't answer it, and then you would use Divine Spirit and Inner Fire, and you would kill your opponent with it. It was a really good card. Necrolord Draka. Against certain matchups, you just play this on 4 mana, hopefully. You get a decent amount of dagger, and you fight for board. And against a lot of decks, this card's going to be your win condition. You play an insane amount of cards on turn 7, turn 8, and you get a really big dagger. And if your opponent does not have weapon removal, you probably just win the game right there. Because of that, it's pretty great. If your opponent doesn't have weapon tech, it's pretty great. Basically good in every matchup, right? Against an aggressive deck, as long as you get like a 3/3 weapon or even a 2/3 weapon at some point, might just be good enough because you also develop a 2/4 or sorry, a 3/4. I think the longer the game goes and the more time you have to gather resources, my God, this card can be insane. I personally think that this is an A tier card. The Stone Right, 4 mana 5/4 battle cry. For the rest of the game, your totems have +2 attack. This is one of those legendaries, man, where it's like, come on, dude, what were we doing, guys? I don't know why they made this card in this set. Maybe it's just fit really nicely into the flavor. But the problem with this effect is that you have to press your hero power to actually make it work. Is your win condition really going to be summoning a totem every single turn? Yeah. I don't know about that one. So this is what we're going for. So we have Anchor Totem, probably wouldn't see play with that deck. Flame Tongue Totem, maybe, might be a little bit better. Mana Tide Totem, probably still too weak. This card's not bad. Like, I could see this card seeing play because it's a totem that your opponent must kill. The bigger problem with this effect, if you don't draw this card, your deck is totems that don't do anything. It might be worse than the Murloc, actually. Artificer Zemox. Again, I'm gonna butcher this name all the time. Zemox, whatever. We need to look what relics are in this set. The Relic of Extinction. It is 2 mana, deal 1 damage to a random enemy minion twice, and it improves your future relics. We then have Relic of Dimensions, which is a 5 mana relic. Draw 2 cards and reduce their cost by 1, improve your relics. Every time you improve this relic, it goes up in damage. When you improve this relic, it reduces the mana cost further. For this one, it's summon 2 1/1 spirits, improve your future relics. They go +1/+1 like Jades. All 3 of these relics do have potential to actually be pretty relevant. The benefit of a card like this is that if you play enough relics, it could just kill 2 minions for 2 mana. That's really good. This card is almost as good as Skull of Gul'dan, but if you play enough relics, again, it is great. For this one, again, you could summon 2 really big boys. Also, yeah, sorry, there is the location, which does cast your next relic twice. If relics end up being good, this card will be insane. If relics end up being absolutely garbage, you're probably not playing this card. It is extremely unlikely that you get the infuse on this effect. Does location make it so the second relic is improved? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I think Jace is a better card, right? Jace doesn't have to be in your hand. I put it like here. I don't know if we're gonna play this effect over Jace. We might just play the relics itself. Maybe even a C. It really depends on how good relics are. But again, it's kind of reminds me of the warrior weapon. Hard to really evaluate a card like this. The Harvester of Envy. After you play a card copied from the opponent, steal the original. The problem with this effect is that there's just so many hoops you have to go through, and I just don't see a world where this card sees play over another legendary in this set. Not only do you have to get the card from your opponent, you have to play that card from your opponent. That feels pretty weak. I'm gonna put it here. I don't think it's unplayable. The only reason I think it actually has potential is because there are some moments where you can actually just kill a deck straight up with this one card in the right matchup. Unfortunately for Hearthstone, so this counts as its own minion for this. So you only have to play 2 other, or basically 1 other minion to get the 3rd minion to 0. The really good thing about this card is for 9 mana, you can go this card into Bran and play a really big legendary. For those of you, just in case you don't remember what Bran is, Bran triggers your battle cries twice. There is a lot of very powerful battle cries that can be used that are usually like 10 mana or 9 mana, or that just can't be played with Bran. Kalthos kind of bypasses that whole thing. I think most of us could probably agree that this card could probably get nerfed. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's meta warping. Banded Wild speedrun, true. Double Relics, pretty great, right? Double Kel'Thuzad, pretty great. Maybe double Hook Tusk if you're feeling extra spicy. Crisis the Voracious, 4 mana, 7/7 battle card, discard your hand. Death Rattle, draw 3 cards. Like, oh, you discard your hand, but you're probably gonna put this into a deck where you play a lot of cards early on and then just play a 7/7, and then if your opponent kills it, they draw 3 cards. You also just put this into a deck that can be cheated out with the Death Rattle minions. This card can pull Voracious out and you're crying. I would imagine that Death Rattle Demon Hunter is going to be one of the best decks in the format because that's a really powerful card. The question is, chat, do we think it's an S tier? Is it a meta warping card? It's never an S. Interesting. Making Death Rattle top tier is warping the meta. If we're going to assume it's going to be top tier, we'll have to wait and see. I'm comfortable putting it as an A though. 7 mana 5/5 battle card for the rest of the game. After you cast a nature spell, summon a 3/3 whelp with rush, and it's a dragon. This is going to sound really stupid, but if it was like in any other class besides Druid, this card would be atrocious. But because it's in Druid and there are so many good nature spells, and we literally just saw this card. We saw this card, which is really good. Really good. I'm gonna go with A. It's probably somewhere around here. Once it's online, my God. And I'm only putting it so high because Druid can actually play this. You know what? Actually, in hindsight, if you don't draw this card pretty early on, it's like not that great. So I'd probably go with the B. We'll go with B. I'm gonna go with B. I don't think Druid needs that many 3/3s, but maybe in some ways it would. I don't know. 8 mana 8/8 taunt, Death Rattle, draw a minion, reduces cost by 8. She's a little slow, and I don't think this card's gonna see a ton of play. It's like, why would you pay 8 mana to get this effect when you could just pay 8 mana to do anything else? Unless you're going for some spicy combos. It's not unplayable. The location's not bad because you get the proc of Death Rattle immediately. I'm gonna go with like a D, or sorry, a C. It's not a D. It's not unplayable, but it's not great. It's probably somewhere like here. Maybe even here. I'm gonna read the sort up to see it to be. Lady Darkvein, 5 mana 3/6 battlecry, summon 2/1 shades. Each gains a Death Rattle to cast your last shadow spell. Okay, I personally think that this card is really good. In the right deck, this card wins you a game. Like if Curse Warlock is good, this card's insane. It works so well into a slower Warlock deck, right? So, I mean, I'm gonna put it up here. I'd arguably put it here. The more shadow spells there are in the game, the better this card gets. It's just such an easy card to fit into so many decks that I think it's really good. Theator the Mad Duke. Now, this one might be the most controversial card of the entire set. I think this card is the best card we've seen. Allows you to pull a win condition from your opponent's hand. It gives you a way to win an unwinnable game, and that's insane. It's a neutral card too, and afterwards the opponent steals it back with its own Duke. I mean, if that's how the game's gonna go, that's how the game's gonna go. It's not like you could snipe their win con 100%. The fact that this card exists in the game means that your opponent always has to play around it. If your opponent is not playing around this card and you have it, you win the game. So you always have to ask yourself now, can I hold this card to win a game if my opponent has the Duke in their deck? You don't get card advantage, but you could get card quality. I am pretty confident this card is the best A card or it's an S tier card. Like, imagine you play this on turn 4 against the Druid and you steal their Guff. Dude, the Druid deck becomes infinitely worse. I'm gonna put an S. I think it's meta warping. It doesn't matter how you pronounce this card because it's absolutely garbage. The bigger problem with this card is that you not only have to play it, but you also have to have a secret on the board, and you also have to have your opponent proc the secret. There is a slight benefit to this card, which is it's cool. The bigger problem with this effect is that you need not only to play secrets into your deck, but you also need to draw this card. And if you don't draw this card and you don't have a secret on board, it's a 4 mana 5/4, and we're never running a 5 mana 4/4. 4 mana 5/4, sorry. I don't think there's even a reason to really discuss this. I just think it's a D. It's probably the best. Maybe like here, maybe it's not unplayable. I just don't think 5/4s are how you're gonna win with Rogue. 4 mana 3/5 for Mage. After a friendly secret is revealed, cast a different Mage secret and gain +2/+2. Chat, this card is bad. This card is bad for almost the same reason as the last card, which Mage secrets are 3 mana, and they're also pretty easy to proc unless you're playing a very specific secret. But then on top of that, if it's a very specific secret and your opponent doesn't proc the secret, this card is a 4 mana 3/5. It's so slow. Of course, there are gonna be moments where you actually proc this and then it keeps going and it's like, oh my God. But bro, come on. It arguably should be down here too, but I think it's better than this card at least. So now on to a good legendary for one. 5 mana 4/5 Battlecry, summon one of each dormant wild seed. You get a bunch of minions for 5 minutes. Kind of insane, to be honest. You get a 1 mana 3/1 with rush after 1 turn, and then 2 turns you get a 2 mana 2/5 with taunt. Or after 3 turns you get the Stag Spirit Wild Seed, which is the 3 mana 5/4, and you get a 4/2 weapon with that. This could also basically slot into almost every single hunter deck. But maybe at 6 mana was too slow. I don't know, but I mean, it's like high A S tier. I think it's high A though. So much value for 5 mana, it's insane. 7 mana 7/7, the Countess for Paladin. Battlecry, if your deck has no neutral cards, add 3 legendary invitations to your hand. And a legendary invitation is a 3 mana spell. Discover a legendary minion from another class that costs 0. Biggest problem with this card is that it's a 7 mana 7/7 do nothing. And you also have to build your deck around it. It's not like Zephyrus. This is kind of a card where if the meta warrants this effect, pretty great. How often can you get away with running a 7 mana 7/7 that does nothing in a deck that you kind of have to build around? I'm gonna go with C. I don't think it's gonna see a ton of play, but it's maybe like, no, I think it's C. It's like around here. I can even see it being like worse. It's probably worse than this card. I don't know. It's probably better than that card. Anyways, chat, that is my tier list.